During Christmas dinner at my son's home, as I soaked in the warmth and laughter of the family gathering, an unfamiliar number pierced the quiet. Go home. Now. The voice was tight, unfamiliar, its urgency sending a chill down my spine. Who is this? I asked, the joy of the evening slipping away. Hurry. I left immediately, abandoning everything. When I reached home, I could hardly believe what I saw. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. The phone shrilled, slicing through the quiet of the evening like a knife through silk. I set down my steaming mug of tea and lifted the receiver, expecting good news, as one does on Christmas. Outside, frost decorated the windows, and the holiday lights cast dancing red and green shadows across my worn leather armchair. Hello? My voice held the bright, hopeful tone reserved for family calls during the holidays. Dad? Amos' voice struck me like a cold gust of winter air. Sharp, measured, and utterly wrong. Son, I was just thinking about Christmas dinner, your mother's turkey recipe. I've decided we'll spend Christmas only with our immediate family this year. Without you. Each word landed with deliberate finality. The fireplace crackled behind me, yet the warmth couldn't reach my bones. My reading glasses slid down my nose as I blinked, trying to absorb what I'd just heard. But son, we always… What happened? Did I do something wrong? Nothing happened. His tone carried the unyielding authority of a judge's gavel. I just want a peaceful holiday. Violet agrees completely. My chest tightened. Violet, who had always fussed over me, who saved the wishbone for me every Christmas. The same Violet who had called last month asking about Eleanor's stuffing recipe. Amos, please, help me understand. We've shared every Christmas since your mother passed. This conversation is over, Dad. I hope you understand. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry wasp. I sat frozen, staring at the handset as if it might offer an explanation. My tea had gone cold, my hands shaking slightly as I finally returned the receiver to its cradle. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 8. Each chime echoed the finality of my son's words. I stayed motionless in my chair, watching the Christmas lights outside blur through the sudden moisture gathering in my eyes. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The fire burned down to embers when I finally rose on shaky legs and walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me from the dark glass, a 68-year-old man, suddenly seeing every line increase as if for the first time. Outside, snow fell in thick, lazy flakes. I pressed my palm against the cold windowpane, frost biting through my skin. Across the street, neighbors' houses glowed with warm light. Families were probably gathered around their tables, sharing laughter and stories. The Hendersons' Christmas tree shone through the front window, presents neatly stacked beneath green boughs. I whispered to my reflection, fogging the glass with my breath. What did I do wrong, Eleanor? The silence that answered felt heavier than the snow piling outside. I traced my finger across the condensation, drawing meaningless patterns while my mind replayed every interaction with Amos over the past months. Had I been too insistent about family traditions? Too eager to keep Eleanor's memory alive through our Christmas rituals? Next door, the Petersons' kitchen light flickered off, leaving only street lamps to illuminate the falling snow. I watched each flake dance in amber light, recalling how young Amos used to press his nose to the same window, counting snowflakes, begging me to read stories of winter adventures. That little boy felt like a stranger now. My stiff fingers finally dropped from the cold glass, leaving only a faint smudge. 2.5 hours had passed since I had moved away. The fire had died completely, leaving only cold ashes and the lingering scent of burned oak. Outside, the neighbors' lights dimmed one by one, leaving scattered pools of yellow on the snow-covered street. I wandered into the kitchen, muscle memory guiding me through preparing a late dinner I had no intention of eating. The microwave hummed, warming leftover soup, but I'd barely noticed. My mind kept circling back to Amos' words, searching for clues I might have missed. The phone book. I should call him back, apologize for whatever I had done wrong. I pulled the heavy yellow pages from the drawer, but something else tumbled out. Eleanor's old photo album, its leather cover cracked and worn. My hands shook as I opened it. There was 5-year-old Amos, gap-toothed and grinning, clutching a wooden toy airplane beneath our Christmas tree. His pajamas were rumpled, hair sticking up wildly. The pure joy radiating from him made my chest ache. I turned the page carefully, the plastic protector crinkling under my fingers. There was Eleanor in our old kitchen, flour dusting her auburn hair like snow, laughing at something I had said while rolling out sugar cookie dough. Her green Christmas Eve dress was spotted with ingredients, but her smile could have powered every holiday light in the neighborhood. Eleanor, why did everything change so much? I whispered to her frozen image. When you were here, we were a real family. The next photograph stole my breath. The three of us together, Eleanor cradling baby Amos against her chest, my younger self with an arm around them both, all of us smiling at the camera. We looked unstoppable then, as if nothing could ever tear us apart. I traced her face with a fingertip, remembering that Christmas morning 15 years ago. Amos barreled down the stairs in his Superman pajamas. Eleanor's cinnamon rolls filled the kitchen with warmth and sugar, while I feigned surprise at his excitement. He begged me to read The Night Before Christmas 3 times that day, snuggling against my shoulder with chocolate-stained fingers and eyes full of wonder. When had that wonder disappeared? When had my boy become this distant stranger, able to excise me from his life with clinical precision? I turned the pages slowly, each photograph a small knife in my chest. Eleanor's last Christmas, 5 years ago, her hands weakened by cancer, yet still wrapping every present herself. That year, Amos had come by less often, offering excuses about work and obligations I had chosen to accept rather than question. Keep the family together, Truman, Eleanor had whispered in her final week, eyes dimmed with morphine and worry. Promise me you won't let distance grow between you and Amos. I had promised. Had I failed her so completely? The microwave beeped insistently, but I ignored it. The soup could wait. Nothing mattered except these frozen snapshots of when we had been whole. My fingers hovered over the phone, 3 separate times dialing Amos' number before letting it go. What could I say? What words could bridge the sudden, yawning chasm? The grandfather clock chimed 11:30. I closed the album carefully but pulled out the photo of Eleanor laughing in our old kitchen. I placed it on my nightstand so I could see her smile first thing in the morning. Perhaps she could help me understand what had gone so terribly wrong with our son. As I undressed, Eleanor's side of the mattress looked impossibly empty, just as it had for 5 long years. But tonight, the emptiness felt magnified, as if losing Amos had doubled the loneliness already living in these rooms. I set my alarm for 8, a habit from 40 years of routine refusing to die, and pulled the covers up to my chin. Outside, snow fell steadily, covering the neighborhood in fresh white that would turn to gray slush by morning. The album went back in the drawer, but not before I whispered one final question to the dark. Where is that little boy who begged me to read bedtime stories? Morning light filtered through curtains that had not been properly opened, casting gray shadows across the rumpled breakfast table. The newspaper lay folded beside a bowl of oatmeal that had grown cold while I read the obituaries, a habit that felt increasingly relevant with each passing year. Eleanor's photo smiled up at me from the nightstand, but even her encouragement could not lift the weight in my chest. The phone rang, jolting me. My spoon clattered against the bowl. After yesterday's conversation, every unexpected call felt like a potential ambush. I glanced at the caller ID with trembling fingers. Amos. My heart lurched. Hope and fear collided as I lifted the receiver. Hello? My voice came out cautious, heavier than intended. Dad. But this time, there was warmth in that single word. I want to apologize for yesterday's call. I was completely wrong. Relief hit me so hard I had to grip the table. Son, I'm so glad you called back. I was worried I'd done something. No, Dad. You didn't do anything. I was stressed about work, took it out on the wrong person. His voice carried that familiar rhythm I remembered from childhood when he'd apologize for breaking something or tracking mud through the house. Violet reminded me how important our family traditions are. We want you to come for Christmas dinner after all. Of course I'll come. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, joy bubbling like champagne. Your mother's turkey recipe, and I'll bring the cranberry sauce. That sounds perfect, Dad. Bring everything you usually make. He paused, and in the silence, my elbow nudged the coffee mug. Violet's really looking forward to it. The kids have been asking about Grandpa Truman's stories. But beneath his enthusiasm, there was something hurried, rehearsed, like he was reading from a script rather than speaking from the heart. Amos, what made you change your mind so suddenly? Yesterday, you seemed so certain. Just realized my mistake, that's all. His words came faster now, overlapping mine. Listen, I need to run. Work calls. You know how it is. We'll see you Christmas Day around noon. Wait, son. Can we? Love you, Dad. See you soon. The line went dead before I could finish. I sat holding the phone, staring at it as if it might offer answers to questions I couldn't articulate. For a moment, pure joy coursed through me. Christmas was saved. My family restored. Eleanor's fears proven wrong. But in the silence that followed, doubt crept in like cold air through a cracked window. Something about Amos' voice didn't feel like my son. The words were correct, the apology appropriate, yet the delivery was hollow, mechanical, as if he were checking boxes instead of mending a bond. I stood abruptly and paced to the kitchen window, where yesterday's snow had transformed the yard into a winter wonderland. The Peterson kids were already outside building a snowman, laughter carrying across the still air. Normal families, doing normal things on a normal December morning. Why doesn't this feel normal? I muttered to Eleanor's memory, turning back toward the living room. Maybe I'm overthinking. He apologized. He wants me there. Isn't that what matters? But as I went through my morning, dishes in the sink, newspaper in the recycling, coffee mug rinsed and dried, the nagging feeling only grew. Amos had deflected every attempt at deeper conversation, rushing off the phone as if afraid I might ask the wrong questions. What kind of questions would be wrong? I picked up the phone again, thumb hovering over the first 3 digits of his number before stopping myself. What could I possibly say? Son, your apology didn't feel real. Why did you hang up so fast? Can you even prove you want me there? Even in my own mind, the questions sounded paranoid. I set the phone down and walked toward the kitchen, mentally listing everything I need for Christmas dinner. The turkey would take hours. The cranberry sauce had to be made fresh, and Eleanor's stuffing recipe required ingredients I didn't yet have. But as my hand hovered over the shopping list, a line from our recent conversation echoed in my memory. Violet reminded me how important our family traditions are. Since when did Violet need to remind Amos of anything? He'd grown up with these traditions, living them every year until his mother died. And why did he single out her support, as though he needed her approval to invite his own father to Christmas dinner? I stared at the blank notepad, pen hovering over the page, as unease settled heavier in my chest. The next 3 days passed with purpose that surprised even me. On December 22nd, I awoke with energy I hadn't felt since Eleanor passed, humming old carols while brewing my morning coffee. The notepad beside my cereal bowl filled quickly with menu plans and shopping lists. Each item checked and double-checked. Turkey. Cranberry sauce. Eleanor's stuffing. I muttered the words to myself, tapping my pen against the worn kitchen table. Everything had to be perfect. This was my chance to prove that family traditions still mattered, that some bonds could survive grief and time. The butcher shop on Maple Street buzzed with holiday shoppers, but I waited patiently, eyes fixed on my mission. When my turn came, I leaned over the glass counter, intensity written on my face. I need your finest turkey, I told the round-faced butcher, his white apron speckled with evidence of his craft. For a special family gathering? His eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, we're bringing the family back together. He handed me a 22-pound turkey, plump and perfect, skin flawless and ready to crisp to golden perfection. I paid without a word of haggling, imagining the moment I would carry it into Amos' kitchen. December 23rd took me to the mall, a river of holiday crowds flowing between brightly lit stores. The toy store overwhelmed me until I spotted the model airplane kit, a vintage Cessna that reminded me of the wooden plane from that old photo. For Sarah, I picked an art set with colored pencils arranged like a rainbow in their wooden box. That evening I harvested herbs from my winter garden, stems crackling between my fingers. Eleanor's marinade recipe, written in her careful script, lay propped against the sugar bowl while I minced garlic and stripped rosemary leaves. "Eleanor, I hope I remember this correctly," I whispered to her photo on the windowsill. "This has to be perfect." The marinade came together into a fragrant green paste: garlic, rosemary, thyme, olive oil, and Eleanor's secret splash of white wine. I worked it carefully under the turkey skin, as if performing some sacred ritual of reconciliation. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and cold, yet my spirits remained high. I wrapped gifts with military precision, folding corners sharp as blades, tying ribbons into perfect bows. My best Christmas shirt hung ready, pressed and waiting. Cologne dabbed behind my ears felt like armor for the night ahead. Yet unease crept in like fog through cracks. Amos hadn't called to confirm details. What time should I arrive? Should I bring wine? Did the kids have any allergies I'd forgotten? My phone stayed stubbornly silent despite my constant glances. Frank Larson appeared at the kitchen window while I washed marinade bowls, his weathered face creased with curiosity. "Big plans tomorrow, Truman?" he called through the glass. "Christmas dinner with Amos and his family," I said, maybe too quickly. "We're going to be a real family again." Something flickered across Frank's face, but he only nodded. "That's wonderful. You deserve happiness." After he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that his words carried more weight than casual neighborly interest. But I pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the golden turkey resting in the fridge and the carefully wrapped gifts waiting by the door. By bedtime on Christmas Eve, everything was in place. Everything except my racing heart, which seemed determined to invent problems where none existed. Why hadn't Amos called? Why had Frank looked so uneasy? Why did this reunion feel more like a staged performance than a homecoming? I lay awake, staring at the ceiling until dawn, telling myself that anticipation always bred anxiety. Tomorrow had to be perfect. It simply had to. Christmas morning arrived crisp and clear, snow sparkling across the neighborhood like scattered diamonds. I dressed with ceremonial care, adjusting my tie in the hallway mirror and coaxing my stubborn hair into submission. The turkey carrier felt heavier than expected as I loaded it into the car, alongside the gift bags. I paused at the front door, key hovering over the lock, glancing back at my house. Empty rooms stared through frost-frosted windows, waiting for my return. A chill crept along my spine, but I shook it off and turned toward the car. Today was about family. Today was about healing. Amos' driveway crunched beneath the tires, ice crystals glittering in the afternoon sun. Christmas lights framed every window and doorway, creating a scene so perfect it made my chest tighten with hope. I unloaded the turkey carrier and gifts, cold air stinging my cheeks as I approached the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open to reveal Violet's warm smile, snow-like dusting her red sweater. "Truman, we're so glad you're here. Come in before you freeze." The house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Holiday music drifted from hidden speakers, while Christmas lights cast rainbow shadows across polished hardwood floors. Timmy appeared at my elbow as if by magic, bouncing on his toes, barely containing his excitement. "Grandpa Truman, did you bring presents? Can we open them now? Mom said we had to wait." "Let your grandfather get settled first," Violet said, laughing, taking the heavy turkey carrier from my numb hands. "This thing weighs a ton. What did you do to it?" "Eleanor's secret marinade," I said, unwinding my scarf as Sarah peeked shyly around the corner. 24 hours of garlic, rosemary, and patience." Martha Harrington emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel dotted with dancing reindeer. Her eyes widened at the sight of the turkey. "This is absolutely magnificent. You have to share Eleanor's secret. I've been cooking the same dull bird for 30 years. The secret is time, I said, accepting Walter's firm handshake and gruff nod. Eleanor always said, good things can't be rushed. Amos appeared last, straightening his tie with movements too precise, too controlled. His smile reached his mouth but didn't quite touch his eyes. Thanks for coming, Dad. This means everything to us. Something in his tone made me study him more closely, but Timmy grabbed my hand and tugged me toward the dining room before I could analyze it. The table gleamed under soft candlelight, places set with Violet's fine china, napkins folded into perfect triangles. My turkey took center stage, its golden skin shimmering under the chandelier like liquid amber. Would you carve Truman? Violet asked, offering the electric knife. You're the artist here. I carved with steady hands, each slice revealing meat so tender it practically fell from the bone. The marinade had worked its magic, herbs forming a fragrant crust that drew appreciative murmurs from around the table. Conversation flowed freely, like wine during dinner. Walter asked about my retirement projects while Martha praised every dish I had contributed. The children chatted excitedly about school and friends. Even Amos seemed to relax, sharing work stories that almost sounded natural. But I noticed the small things, the way he glanced at his watch when he thought no one saw, how he flinched at the buzz of a phone. His laughter had the right notes, but something underneath felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. Grandpa, can we open presents now? Sarah asked softly, finishing her cranberry sauce. Please, 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 Timmy added, bouncing in his chair until Violet placed a calming hand on his shoulder. The gift exchange took place in the living room, wrapping paper scattered like colorful snow. Timmy's eyes grew wide as he unwrapped the model airplane, turning the box over to examine every detail. A Cessna! Just like the ones at the air show! Can we build it together? Of course, I promised, warmth spreading through my chest. That's what grandfathers are for. Sarah hugged her art set close, already planning masterpieces with pencils that gleamed like jewels in their wooden case. I'm going to draw our whole family, she announced solemnly. Even great-grandma Eleanor, so she can be with us, too. The room fell silent for a moment. Eleanor's absence suddenly felt like an extra guest. But it wasn't the sharp grief I'd carried for 5 years. This was gentler, like she was smiling down at us from somewhere beyond, watching us find joy again. She would have loved that, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. As evening settled in, the warmth of the meal wrapped around us like a familiar blanket. Walter and I talked baseball while Martha helped Violet clear the dishes. The children played on the floor with their new gifts, their laughter weaving a cheerful background to adult conversation. I loosened my tie and sank into the armchair Violet had set aside for me, feeling a contentment I hadn't felt in months. This was what Christmas was meant to be, family together, traditions honored, love flowing across generations. My phone buzzed against my chest, faint but persistent through my jacket pocket. I ignored it, unwilling to break the spell of this perfect evening. But it buzzed again, sharp and insistent, impossible to overlook. Excuse me for a moment, I said to Walter, who was describing his grandson's baseball skills, and slipped away, the phone vibrating urgently against my ribs. The narrow powder room off the main hallway offered a moment of privacy. The door clicked shut, muffling the sounds of family around me. My screen lit up, an unknown number. I hesitated. Who calls on Christmas night besides telemarketers or scammers? But when it stopped ringing and rang again immediately, irritation overrode caution. Hello? You need to get home immediately, a male voice said, sharp, urgent, cutting through pleasantries like a knife through wrapping paper. I blinked at my reflection in the mirror, annoyance giving way to confusion. Who is this? What are you talking about? That doesn't matter right now. Just go home. My grip on the phone tightened. Behind the door, I could hear Timmy explaining airplane parts to his grandmother, sounds that now felt impossibly distant. I don't understand. What's happening? Trust me. Go now. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, hoping it would somehow clarify itself. My reflection looked older somehow, worry lines etched deeper around my eyes. The voice had conviction. Real urgency, not the practiced tone of a scam. My chest tightened. Fire? A break-in? Had I left something running that could explode? My mind raced while my heart followed suit. But this was Christmas dinner, my first real family gathering in 5 years. Could I leave over a cryptic warning from a stranger? Violet would worry. The children would be confused. Amos might think I was making excuses. The phone felt heavy in my hands as indecision battled instinct. Logic argued, probably a prank, a wrong number. But something in the voice had pierced my rational defenses. I checked the number again, completely unfamiliar. No voicemail, no text, just that single, stark command. From the hallway, Amos' laughter rang out at something Walter said, too bright, too sharp. Had he noticed my absence? Was he checking his watch, wondering why I'd gone missing? My reflection stared back at me, eyes wide and tense. Christmas lights cast red and green shadows across my face. Trust me. Go now. Trust whom? Why? What could possibly be so urgent that a stranger would call me on Christmas night? Even as questions multiplied, my body had already begun to react. Shoulders tense, breast shallow, a primal alarm flaring through me. My house, empty, dark, windows locked. What if someone was inside now? Searching through my belongings? Flooding fire? Dad, you okay in there? Amos' voice came through the door, perfectly timed, laced with concern. 1 minute. I called, my voice steadier than I felt. I took a deep breath, watching my reflection brace itself for whatever was coming. The stranger's urgency had infected me. I couldn't ignore it. Couldn't rationalize it. Couldn't let Christmas dinner feel more important than this gnawing certainty that something was wrong. I reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling slightly on the cold brass. Whatever explanation I gave the family would have to suffice. Whatever awaited me at home couldn't wait for dessert. I opened the door. The warm family scene beyond felt suddenly alien. Children laughing, adults chatting over coffee, the soft glow of Christmas lights. All of it suddenly distant. Everything okay, Dad? Amos asked, looking up from Walter, a flicker behind his eyes I couldn't read. Worry, suspicion, or calculation? I need to go home, I said sharply, the words cutting through the cozy evening like a blade. Violet appeared at my side, dish towel still in hand. Home? But we haven't had dessert yet. I made your favorite apple pie. There's an emergency. I grabbed my coat, movements jerky and urgent. Someone called. Something's wrong at the house. The room fell quiet, except for Timmy's model airplane swooshing between furniture. Sarah looked up from her art supplies, colored pencils scattered like rainbow sprinkles. What kind of emergency? I don't know yet, I admitted, fumbling with coat buttons as stress made muscle memory fail. They just said I needed to get home immediately. Amos rose, his face a study in concerned confusion. Who called? Why didn't they explain what's wrong? I studied my son for a brief moment, searching for some hidden clue. His worry was real, but beneath it, something else lingered, something I couldn't name. A tension that didn't match the urgency in his words. I have to go. I bent to kiss the children goodbye, their small faces upturned at me, wide with innocent confusion. Thank you for a wonderful Christmas dinner. I'm sorry to leave like this. The cold December air hit me like a slap as I hurried to my car, family voices drifting after me through the open doorway. The engine turned reluctantly, groaning against the sudden demand after idling in the chill. I backed out too fast, nearly scraping Amos' mailbox. In the rearview mirror, I saw them gathered in the doorway, Violet hugging herself against the cold, Walter shaking his head, the kids pressing their noses to the glass. Amos stood slightly apart, his silhouette dark against the warm glow spilling from inside. The suburban streets lay empty before me, Christmas lights blinking from house to house like distant stars. Most families were indoors, celebrating, creating the cozy tableau of a perfect night. I caught glimpses through uncurtained windows. Silent Night played softly on a radio, but this night felt anything but quiet or holy. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. That unknown voice replayed over and over in my mind. Trust me. Go now. But trust whom? And why? What could possibly be happening at home that demanded such urgency? The speedometer crawled past the limit as intersections blurred by. I ran a yellow light, then another, driven by a primitive instinct that screamed danger even when reason saw nothing. Had I left something running, the stove, a space heater? I had been meticulous, double-checking everything before leaving. The house was secure, spotless, ready for my return, unless someone else had entered it. That thought hit me like ice water. A break-in. Someone had seen the dark, empty house on Christmas night and decided it was easy pickings. But how would they know my number? How would they know I wasn't there? My mind flicked back to Amos at dinner, the way he checked his watch, the forced laughter, the relief I glimpsed when I announced I had to leave. Was I imagining things, connecting dots that didn't exist? Or had my son seemed almost eager for me to go? The suspicion settled like a weight in my chest, growing heavier with each passing mile. I turned into my neighborhood. Few houses showed signs of life. Christmas in suburbia meant curtains drawn against the cold, perfect cover for crime. My house sat dark at the end of the street, just as I had left it hours ago. Yet something felt off, a subtle wrongness that made my skin crawl before I could even name it. I parked behind Frank Larson's oak tree instead of my own driveway, instincts screaming stealth over convenience. The engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound in the crystalline night. Cold air bit my cheeks as I stepped out, senses suddenly sharp and alert. The familiar street had transformed, shadows thickened, ordinary objects turned into potential hiding spots or weapons. My house crouched dark against the starry sky. But something was wrong with its outline. A basement window, normally reflecting the streetlight, stared back as a black void. Broken glass glittered on the snow below like scattered diamonds. Someone was inside. Fumbling with numb fingers, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 while crouching behind Frank's fence. A flashlight beam swept across the upstairs bedroom window. Methodical. Deliberate. Whoever it was wasn't panicking, they were searching. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I whispered, eyes glued to the moving beam. I can see them inside with a flashlight. Sir, what's your address? Are you in a safe location? I rattled off the street number, never taking my eyes off the beam. I'm outside. They broke in through the basement window. Officers are on their way. Please stay away from the house until they arrive. Stay away, while someone ransacked everything Eleanor and I had built, pawing through our memories, our private papers, our life's work. How long until the police get here? Approximately 10 to 15 minutes, sir. Please remain at a safe distance. 10 to 15 minutes. A lifetime for a thief to strip everything valuable and vanish into the night. I hung up and popped my trunk, hands trembling as I searched through emergency supplies and forgotten tools. My fingers closed around cold metal, a tire iron, left over from changing a flat last spring. The weight felt real, grounding. Whoever was invading my home was about to meet far more resistance than they'd anticipated. I edged around the house, using Christmas decorations and snow-laden bushes as cover. The shattered basement window told the story, jagged glass pointing inward, snow scattered across the floor where the intruder had climbed through. Inside, the flashlight beam moved with precision through my bedroom, pausing at Eleanor's jewelry box on the dresser, then sweeping toward the closet where I kept critical papers. This wasn't random vandalism or the work of a desperate addict. Someone was hunting for something specific. My hands clenched the tire iron as protective rage surged through me. This was my home, my sanctuary, the life Eleanor and I had built, and some stranger thought they could plunder it as if it meant nothing. I pressed myself against the shadows near the broken window, ears straining for sounds from within. Footsteps creaked overhead, deliberate, purposeful, traversing rooms holding 40 years of memories. The flashlight beam cut across the walls like a searching lighthouse. What were they after? Cash? Jewelry? Electronics? Or something far more personal? The steps moved toward the stairs, descending to the basement, toward me. My breath steamed in the frigid air, every muscle coiled, tire iron raised and ready. Whoever came through that window would meet a homeowner who had reached his limit. The basement light flicked on, then off again. Careful, cautious, but not cautious enough. Papers rustled, shuffled, examined. The sound made my stomach twist. The invasion of our private life, the violation of Eleanor and my shared history. A chair scraped the floor. Drawers opened and closed with soft thuds. The intruder moved with calm assurance, confident they had time. They were wrong. The flashlight beam swept closer to the broken window, throwing long shadows across the snow. I pressed against the brick wall, tire iron trembling with cold and adrenaline. First, a dark canvas bag appeared, stuffed with papers and small objects. Then a leg, testing the frame for sharp glass. I held my breath, every muscle tensed. One more second. Just one more second, and I'd know who thought they could steal from Truman Dixon on Christmas night. The second leg followed, then a torso, one I recognized with sickening clarity. Alton Reed straightened in my backyard, gripping a canvas bag full of documents and small valuables, utterly unaware he wasn't alone. Alton! I stepped from the shadows, tire iron raised. My voice cut through the winter stillness like a whip. He spun, nearly losing his footing on the icy snow. The bag slipped from his hands, papers flying like oversized confetti. His face went pale under the dim glow of neighboring lights. Truman! I didn't want to. This wasn't my idea. Whose idea then? I advanced, the tire iron heavy and righteous in my hands. Documents littered the snow, Eleanor's will, bank statements, stock certificates. Alton raised his hands, backing toward the house. He said you'd be at dinner for hours. He said you'd never know who told me. Even as he spoke, cold understanding crystallized in my chest. Amos had known. Amos had orchestrated this Christmas reunion so I could. The tire irons slipped from my suddenly numb fingers, thudding into the snow. My son sent you. Alton nodded miserably, tears streaking his face in the frigid air. He had needed Eleanor's will. The Boeing stock certificates. He said you were going to give millions to charity instead of family. Each word struck me like a blow. I staggered, staring at the scattered papers, Eleanor's careful handwriting on legal documents, stock certificates worth more than most people see in a lifetime, our life's savings reduced to loot. I whispered hoarse. The Christmas dinner, the apology, the invitation, it was all fake. He's desperate, Truman. Alton dropped to his knees, shaking as he tried to gather the papers. Gambling debts. Bad investments. Creditors who don't forgive late payments. My legs wobbled as the full betrayal sank in. Amos had looked me in the eye at dinner, accepted my turkey and gifts, let his children climb on my lap, all while knowing his friend was ransacking my home. How much does he owe? I asked, voice raw. Close to 200,000. Alton whispered, barely audible. He discovered the Boeing stock through Eleanor's estate papers. He said it was family money, anyway, you'd understand eventually. Family money. Eleanor's lifetime of careful saving and investing, built over decades, reduced to paying off gambling debts. Stocks she bought with her teacher's salary, penny by penny, dollar by dollar, trusting that her husband would use them wisely. I picked up one of the certificates lying in the snow, Eleanor's name inscribed in her meticulous script at the top. $2.3 million in Boeing stock, accumulated over 30 years of marriage, purchased when the company was struggling and shares were cheap. Her retirement nest egg, her safeguard against an uncertain future. He planned to steal my wife's life savings to cover his own debts. Alton nodded, no longer bothering to gather the papers. You'd never notice, he said. Old people don't need that much money anyway. The casual cruelty of his words, reducing 68 years of Eleanor's life to nothing, treating her legacy like a target for theft, made something inside me shatter, like ice cracking across a frozen pond. I stared at Alton, then at the scattered documents in the snow, and finally at the broken basement window gaping like a wound in the foundation of my home. Everything I had believed about my son, our relationship, the possibility of repairing old wounds, all lies built on greed and desperation. My phone rang, the sound sharp and jarring in the winter stillness. I glanced at the screen. Amos. He's probably wondering why you left dinner early, Alton said miserably. He's going to be furious that I got caught. I stared at my son's name, thumb hovering over the answer button. Behind me, police sirens wailed, drawing closer. In front of me, the snow-covered wreckage of Eleanor's trust and my faith in family stretched out, silent and accusing. The phone rang again, insistent. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flickering through bare trees like a twisted holiday display. I stood over Alton, crumpled in the snow among the scattered papers, his confessions still hanging in the freezing air. 2 patrol cars turned the corner, headlights sweeping across my yard and illuminating the broken basement window like evidence frozen in time. Officers emerged, calm and professional, hands resting on their belts, eyes quickly taking in the scene. "Sir, are you the homeowner who called 911? The lead officer approached, badge catching the reflection of neighboring Christmas lights. "Truman Dixon. This is my house," I said, gesturing toward Alton. He raised his hands higher, surrendering to 2 suburban cops as if facing an army. The second officer knelt beside Alton, beginning the familiar procedure, rights, handcuffs, while his partner focused on me. "What was taken, Mr. Dixon?" I gathered Eleanor's will from the wet snow, edges darkened by moisture, but the text still readable. "He took financial papers, my late wife's will. Boeing stock certificates worth over $2 million, banking information." The officer's eyebrows shot up. "That's grand larceny territory." Frank Larson appeared from his house, bathrobe tied over pajamas, slippers crunching in the snow. Relief and concern mixed on his weathered face as he took in the scene. "Frank, you're the one who called me?" I asked, the pieces finally clicking together. "Yeah. Saw someone with a flashlight in your house around 9. He said, nodding toward the officers. "Couldn't ignore it on Christmas night. Tracked down your number from the neighborhood directory. You owe me more than just gratitude for saving your possessions tonight." I clasped his shoulder, grateful for a neighbor who still cared. The lead officer looked between us, understanding dawning. So this wasn't a random break-in. Mr. Reed knew the house would be empty. "He's my son's friend," I said, bitterly tasting the words. My son had known I'd be at his house for Christmas dinner. He had planned this entire thing. Alton, handcuffed and seated in the back of the patrol car, stared through the window, watching his future unravel. The officer nodded grimly as details emerged: the gambling debts, the planned theft, the manipulation of family traditions. My phone rang again. Amos, glaring from the screen like an accusation. "Should I answer that?" I asked the officer. "Go ahead. Might be enlightening." I put the call on speaker so the officers could hear. "Hello, Amos. Dad, where are you? We're worried. You've been gone over an hour." His voice carried concern and confusion. "I'm coming back, son. We need to talk." A silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear his mind racing, trying to interpret my tone. "Everything okay? You sound different." "Everything will be clear soon." I ended the call before he could ask more. The officers finished their paperwork while I gathered the scattered documents, each one a fragment of Eleanor's life that had nearly been stolen by her own son. The Boeing stock certificates felt heavier in my hands than their actual weight. 30 years of Eleanor's careful savings, penny by penny from her teacher's salary. "We'll need you to come in tomorrow to finalize your statement," the lead officer said, handing me his card. "Mr. Reed will face charges for breaking and entering, attempted grand larceny, and probably a few more once we sort through everything." Frank walked with me to my car as the patrol vehicles drove away, their lights fading into the night. Elton's pale face appeared through the rear window, ghostly, like a Christmas specter of what was to come. "You sure you're all right to drive back there?" Frank asked. "That conversation isn't going to be easy." I gave one last look at my house. The broken window, the disturbed snow, the Christmas wreath on the front door suddenly seemed to sneer at the notion of peace on earth. "Some conversations can't wait, Frank. Some truths need to be spoken while they're still raw." The car grumbled to life in the cold, engine protesting the sudden demand. As I backed onto the street, my headlights swept over the festive decorations at the door. The cheerful red bow felt like a cruel contrast to the family chaos I was about to confront. Beside me, Eleanor's will rested safely on the passenger seat, rescued from theft and betrayal. No matter what came next, her legacy would survive. I pulled into Amos' driveway. Warm light spilled from the windows, Christmas lights twinkling, presenting a perfect picture of domestic happiness. Through the front window, I could make out shapes moving in the living room, my son pacing near the tree, Violet gesturing anxiously. The recovered papers sat on the passenger seat like evidence in a courtroom. Eleanor's will, damp but readable, the Boeing stock certificates, her careful signature preserved over decades. I arranged them carefully, each sheet a weapon in the battle for truth I was about to fight. I didn't knock. This was still family, even if the word had been tainted by betrayal and greed. The door opened onto a scene of ordinary domestic life. Violet folding dish towels by the kitchen, Walter reading a magazine, Martha absorbed in a crossword. Children sprawled on the carpet with their new toys. All eyes turned to me. Amos' expression shifted from relief to confusion, then fear as he noticed the papers in my hands. "Truman!" "Thank goodness," Violet said, hurrying toward me. "What happened?" "You look awful." "Ask your husband," I said, voice steady, placing the documents on the coffee table with deliberate care. Each item arranged to display Eleanor's handwriting on the will, the Boeing letterhead, the bank information. Amos stared at the papers as if they were sentencing him. "Dad, I don't understand. What is all this?" "These are Eleanor's will and the Boeing stock certificates that Alton tried to steal tonight," I said, letting the facts speak. "He's in police custody, charged with breaking and entering and attempted grand larceny." Walter's magazine slipped from his hands. "Stock certificates? What stocks?" "Eleanor left me Boeing shares worth $2.3 million. I watched as comprehension spread across the room. Shock, disbelief, dawning understanding. "She bought them over 30 years, saving from her teacher's salary when the company was struggling." Amos' eyes widened as I added, "I plan to donate the inheritance to veterans organizations and educational charities." "Dad, that's our family inheritance," Amos said, his carefully constructed composure cracking, revealing desperation. "You can't just give it all away to strangers." "I can do what I choose with my money," I replied. "You chose to steal it instead of talking to me." Violet sank onto the couch, one hand over her mouth as the pieces fell into place. The Christmas invitation, the sudden reconciliation, all designed to give Amos an alibi while his friend raided our home. I turned to face my son. "You used Christmas, your children's joy, your wife's goodness, and my grief for your mother to cover a theft." Martha's crossword fell to the floor, forgotten. "Amos, please tell us this isn't true." But denial was gone. The evidence was on the table, his friend arrested, the conspiracy laid bare. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the debts, the people I owe." "How much?" Walter's voice cut through, measured and commanding. $200,000, Amos admitted. The words hit the room like an explosion. "Bad investments, some gambling. It started small, but it grew too fast." "So you stole from your father?" Violet's voice broke. "And involved our children in this scheme?" Timmy looked up from his model airplane, sensing the tension without understanding it. "Why is everyone yelling?" Sarah clutched her new art supplies, colored pencils spilling across the carpet like shards of a family fracturing around her. "Your father made some very bad choices," I said gently to the children, then looked back at Amos. "Choices that hurt people who trusted him." I hadn't wanted to hurt anyone. Amos was crumbling completely now, years of careful deception collapsing under the weight of exposure. I only needed time to make things right, to repay my debts. By stealing from your father on Christmas night. Walter stood abruptly, his usual quiet composure replaced by moral outrage. By lying to your wife, using your children as alibis. Violet was sobbing now, not the soft tears of holiday sentiment, but the raw grief of someone watching their whole life unravel. How long have you been lying to me? About money, work, everything? Martha gathered the bewildered children closer, shielding them from the adult devastation that had hijacked their Christmas celebration. I looked around the room, Violet's tears, the grandparents' shock, children too young to understand why joy had turned to chaos, and my son, slumped in guilt and despair. This family had been carved apart by greed, as efficiently as any blade. The Boeing shares would go to veterans programs and educational charities, just as Eleanor would have wanted. I collected the documents from the coffee table, preparing to leave the wreckage behind. She had believed in helping others, in building something meaningful. You had turned her legacy into a target for theft. I paused at the doorway, taking in the ruined Christmas scene. Violet still wept, Walter comforted Martha, the children sat among scattered toys, and Amos remained slumped, head in hands. You and the children are always welcome in my home, I said to Violet. You're innocent in all this. Stepping into the cold December night, I left behind the warm lights and the remnants of what had once been my family. Morning light filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows over Eleanor's rescued documents neatly arranged beside her photograph. Steam rose from my favorite mug, the one she'd given me 20 years ago, printed with "World's Best Husband" in fading letters, as I studied the stock certificates with a new clarity. The Boeing shares represented more than money. Each purchase date told a story. September 1995, when layoffs threatened the company and Eleanor saw opportunity. March 2001, after September 11th, when airline stocks plummeted and she believed in recovery. December 2008, during the financial crisis, when panic sales abounded, and she bought with faith. My phone rang. Violet's name appeared on the screen, tightening my chest with concern. Truman, I'm so sorry. Her voice quivered, a mixture of tears and resolve. I never knew about Amos' plans, any of it. Violet, none of this is your fault. You're a good woman who trusted the wrong man. I'm filing for divorce, she said, words spilling out as if rushing them made them easier to bear. The children don't deserve a criminal father. I can't live with someone capable of this. You and the children are always welcome in my life. Thank you, I said, the words heavy with gratitude. After she hung up, I stared at Eleanor's photograph, remembering our conversations about family, values, and what truly mattered. She would have been heartbroken by Amos' choices, but proud of the truth finally emerging. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Frank Larson stood on my porch, concern etched into his weathered face. How are you holding up, friend? It hurts, Frank, but the lies are gone now. I gestured him inside, grateful for a steadfast friend in the aftermath of family destruction. You did the right thing. Truth matters even when it's painful, he said. Eleanor would have been proud that justice outweighed misplaced loyalty. We poured coffee and settled into the rhythm of honest conversation. Frank's police experience was invaluable as we discussed changing locks, updating security, and revising my will to keep Amos away from the inheritance. What will you do with Eleanor's shares? He asked, examining the Boeing certificates. Honor her memory. Veterans programs, scholarships, community initiatives, things that build people up instead of tearing them down. Frank nodded approvingly. She would have liked that. After he left, I called my attorney to schedule a will revision, then contacted the bank about extra security for my safe deposit box. Eleanor's legacy would be protected, used as she intended. The house felt different now, not empty, but peaceful. The deception was gone, the pretense lifted. I was 68, surrounded by friends who valued truth, a daughter-in-law who respected integrity, grandchildren who deserved better role models. My phone buzzed with a text from Violet, The kids want to know when they can visit Grandpa Truman again. I smiled, typing back, anytime. We'll build new traditions. Looking at Eleanor's photograph on the mantel, I felt her presence guiding my decisions. Her money would help veterans find work, fund scholarships for teachers, support programs that strengthen families instead of destroying them. Your Boeing shares will help people build better lives, I whispered to her image. Just as you would have wanted. Amos had chosen greed over family, lies over love, theft over trust. I chose honor over blood, truth over convenience, integrity over comfort. The December sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny prayers in the golden glow. Outside, snow blanketed the neighborhood in pristine white, a promise of new beginnings. I opened the front door to breathe the crisp air, looking out at the street where Frank had stood guard like a sentinel of justice. The future stretched ahead, smaller than planned, but cleaner, more honest, built on foundations that wouldn't crumble. Eleanor's legacy was safe. Truth had triumphed over deceit. Real family, built on love and respect, not blood and obligation, would endure. That was enough. That was everything. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.